And now, turning to our program, since David did such a great job last week, we're going to have him come back up today and as the former lead for Wisconsin Alliance for Civic Trust and Ideas Lab editor for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, to introduce our speaker.
All right, I'm just going to sit down and do it from here. Welcome, everybody. And I want to welcome my friend Paul Smith. Paul is a Wisconsin native who's covered wildlife conservation, outdoor recreation, aquatic invasive species, and environmental issues for daily newspapers in our state since 1994. Since 2008, he's been the outdoors editor at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, where I've known him. Paul's work has won more than 200 awards, including the 2025 Enduring Excellence Award from the Outdoor Writers Association of America. He holds a bachelor's degree from Carthage College in biology, natural science, and conservation, and he studied photojournalism at Marquette. He also served as president of the Wisconsin Outdoor Communicators Association and on the board of the Association of Great Lakes Outdoors Writers and Outdoor Writers Association of America, and he's been on a hunting safety task force for the National Wild Turkey Federation. Paul also is one of a long line of really terrific outdoor writers that we've had in our community over the past 80, 100 years. When I first moved to town, Jay Reed was at the Milwaukee Journal, well-known name that many of you may remember. And it goes back way beyond that when they were using Model Ts to go out into the woods and take photographs. So it's a real pleasure to have Paul here with us today. Let's welcome Paul Smith.
Thank you very much.
So Paul, maybe you could just sort of, in a big picture way, talk about, this is a state that really values the outdoors, has for generations. When I grew up in Indiana, we came up to Wisconsin because it was where all the outdoors people were. What's the current state, would you say, of the environment for outdoor sports in our state now?
You're asking for a letter grade?
Yeah, maybe a letter grade. Yeah,
Teacher
how are we
for a
doing?
second. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did grow up here. I grew up in Racine County and have pretty much never wanted to do anything else but go outdoors and participate in all these wonderful traditional activities. So, and I go back now to the late 60s and 70s, and now we have tremendous resources in this state. So fishing, hunting, forestry, wildlife, but there's obviously great challenges too. Right outside our door here in Lake Michigan with invasive species is a classic example. So if I were to grade it, I would give it a C minus. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk a little more about why you would do that, but let's talk about one of the success stories, the bald eagle.
Yeah.
Again, when I first moved here, you had to go way up north to see a bald eagle, and now you can see them in all of our counties, including Milwaukee County. How did that happen? How is it we've been so successful as a state at repropagating that species of bird?
Yeah, this is one of the real strong success stories, and it has its basis in environmental regulations, specifically a class of pesticides, including DDT, and it was through the 1950s or so, started to be determined that that pesticide found its way into bald eagles, ospreys, peregrine falcons, other birds, and it caused them to lay real thin-shelled eggs. The eggs were so fragile that the bird's weight would break them, so the reproduction rates went way down. That chemical got banned, both in Wisconsin and nationally by the Environmental Protection Agency. Once that happened, these birds really started to do well. And bald eagles are, they're bullies. They're like big and beefy, and they didn't need a whole lot of help, but that was a critical move for their success. So we have them now here in Wisconsin. So the story that you see up on the boards there is of the first documented success of a nest in Milwaukee County in more than 100 years. It's hard to say exactly when the last one had been, but if you think about Milwaukee County being developed in the 1800s, almost all the trees were cut. And bald eagles really need a big tree to make a nest in. And so they probably weren't nesting here after the 1850s or so. But there are now, for the last several years, been successful nests in the Milwaukee County Parks system in the southern part of the county. Eagles are trying to nest in Bayview, and it's in a backyard. It's probably an eighth of an acre lot that has a pine tree in the backyard. It's a young couple, so they play house, is the way the eagle biologists describe it, and they don't always try, they're teenagers. And so they didn't carry that out.
So Paul, is this legal?
Yeah, they didn't go, but the same pair also is making a nest by Mitchell Airport. And I wrote a story this year, twice federal authorities removed that nest from a tree because of potential issues with aircraft collisions. So that pair can't decide which spot they like best right now. But so they're around, and you should not be surprised to see them. This winter, there was a day, there were 25 bald eagles on the ice off the Milwaukee Harbor. There's open water here typically, that's all they need is open water. They eat fish, they eat ducks. They're bullies, like I said, so if they see another bird with some food, they may take it from them. So that's a success story. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We can name others, but my grade overall, when I gave the lowest grade, if we only talked about the success stories, it would be one thing. It's a very complex, issue, and this is a shining positive.
Just on eagles for a minute, do eagles continue to use the same nest year after year? Do they usually do that?
They often do. Yeah, they're territorial, so they establish a territory, and they often make a nest. The nests are massive, if you've ever seen one. They can weigh 1,000 pounds, and they add to it each year. What often happens is the tree can't support it, so it'll collapse and they have to rebuild it. But yes, they are territorial, they defend the territory, and they'll come back to that nest.
Do they migrate at all? Or
They do migrate, but only as far as necessary. What happened today, my boss Louisa noticed this, but she had rose-breasted grosbeaks in her yard today that just showed up overnight, and some other species. What we have, those are long distance migrants. Some of those birds go to South America, Central America, Southern US, and they come back. Last night there was a movement of something like 800 million birds picked up by Birdcast. If you read our paper a couple Sundays ago, we had a story on this radar. It's Doppler radar refined to be able to pick up biological objects. It can pick up insects. That's how good it is. So last night, this Birdcast estimated 800 million birds were in flight over the US. And so they normally migrate at dark. 80% of our migrating species migrate after dark. And this morning, if you look around, when you get back home or wherever you're going, look around, you might see a bird that wasn't there yesterday. Wow. But eagles, not so much. Eagles will move 100 miles if they have to, 200 miles. They just need open water. They're cold tolerant. They do really well in Alaska and northern Canada, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. But they just need open water, and they're fine.
Yeah. So let's talk about another species that there seem to be a lot of in our state, and that's the white-tailed deer.
Oh.
The last gun deer season, my reading of it, it seems successful, but you had some questions about that in the deer population.
Well, this is one of those areas where we're not doing that well because our deer population is too high. It's higher than any wildlife manager would want. The most recent estimate is 1.89 million deer statewide. And that's an all-time record high. We see them in our lives, doesn't matter where you live, they're around. And they're also very adaptable. So that's a species that, like the bald eagle, you give it a chance, it will do well. White-tailed deer can eat themselves out of house and home. So they have a very large, outsized impact on the ecosystem. That's why it's important for a wildlife management standpoint to keep their numbers in check. And I grew up as a hunter, but our hunting population looks a lot like me. I'm like your average hunter. And if you were trying to sustain any activity, you would really want your most common aged participant to be something like 30 years old. Well, I'm 65. And last year, Wisconsin sold more gun deer hunting licenses to 65-year-olds than any other age. When you look at the mode of the license sales of ages, 65, right here. So we're aging out, and that's reducing the hunting pressure on our deer population, and it is really, combined with some, the legislature, when politicians get involved in wildlife management, it's almost always bad. And politicians got involved in two big ways in 2011 in Wisconsin, and we're seeing the impacts now. It's really kind of building and cascading toward a larger deer population.
What were the things that the legislature did?
The legislature responded to some hunters. Hunters are like anything else. You can find a variety of opinions, but some hunters were complaining about two rules. One was earn a buck, meaning you could not shoot an antlered deer, a buck, which is, most hunters really want to shoot a buck, but you couldn't shoot a buck until you first shot a doe. And that was very effective at helping reduce or keep the deer population in check, but it was unpopular. So the legislators took it out of the toolbox. It's no longer, DNR cannot put that in place. Another one was an early gun season in October. And we have a very strong bow hunting tradition in this state, and the bow hunters didn't like that. So they responded, in my view, to a minority opinion on both of those issues, but they got political traction on it and passed it.
So are there natural predators that can help keep in check the deer population, and what's happening to those populations?
Yeah, well, we have another success story, and it's the gray wolf in Wisconsin, which has increased in number substantially over the last few decades. So in northern Wisconsin, where the wolves mostly live, they do kill deer, and they're a benefit. If you wanted to keep deer numbers in check, you would want to have more wolves. Also, black bears prey on deer fawns, and mostly on deer fawns, and bobcats will occasionally take a deer. So we have a fair number of natural predators, but it's not enough because the deer are really increasing in number in the agricultural areas and suburban areas. Yeah.
And so what's being done to encourage more hunting in the state?
There's a bunch of programs that are attempting, learn to hunt programs. I've mentored in many of them. But it's just a real challenge to get kids outdoors, period. But hunting is even more difficult because it takes more effort. And the future of hunting is facing a lot of different negative pressures. I did a story with Richard Louv. He's an author, and he wrote some books on kids and nature. And one of the quotes in his book was, one of the boys he was interviewing about his views on what he likes to do was he likes indoors because that's where the electrical outlets are, for his handheld devices and things. We know that that's true. I mean, we got a whole generation, maybe two now, that are growing up that have access to these electronic devices, and it's just a challenge to get people outside. And it's even more difficult to get them to embrace hunting. Also, when I grew up in Racine County, I could hunt out my back door. As we've developed more land, that's not as much as possible for kids.
So while we're still on the deer hunt, talk about your sort of routine when you go out every year, I think still, right?
I do go out, yeah. So the picture you're seeing is from the Aldo Leopold Reserve near Baraboo, the Leopold Pines Conservation Area, and that's a hunt from last year, 2 years ago. But I hunt there often. I hunt a lot of places. I like to shoot does because I like to try to work toward better land management, and so I have developed relationships with Aldo Leopold Foundation and some private landowners who welcome me because, for my job, I like to tell a different gun deer opener story every year, though, so the readers get a broader breadth of things. I have written a story from Wauwatosa. There were some brothers, the Quinnell brothers, who had a deer camp in their basement and hunted in Germantown. I have hunted in Bayfield County in a backwoods cabin with no electricity and just about everything in between. This Aldo Leopold Foundation, one year I slept in the shack, Aldo Leopold shack, and I couldn't sleep because I was so excited. He's one of my heroes. And I shot 2 deer that next morning, and Aldo Leopold, when he lived there, had very few deer. So this is one of the things that's changed over time is our deer population used to be in the northern part of the state, and now it's shifted to the central and the south, the biggest numbers. So my routine is I hunt with a bow, I hunt with a gun, I hunt. My wife and I enjoy the meat. We donate deer. So I have a tradition of getting out as often as possible.
Well, if you haven't been to Baraboo and seen the Aldo Leopold shack and the museum there, it is really worth seeing if you love the outdoors. And read the book, reread it every year. Awesome book. Let's talk about climate change. You've written a fair amount about it. What have you seen in the outdoors? How are things changing?
You know, if you just look at it from your own experience, it's not that easy to see in front of your eyes because it's taking place over decades. But from the time I was a kid till now, the estimates are our average temperature in Wisconsin has increased 3 degrees. The brook trout population, I like to fish for brook trout, it has declined substantially because they need colder water. In 2024, I never experienced this, but Oneida County couldn't open their snowmobile trails for lack of snow. So there are these points, and if you look at global temperature change or sea temperatures, those are very indicative. You'll see the charts and you probably would wish that was your stock market portfolio because it's only going one way. So, it's happening, but it may not be all that easy to observe every day in front of you. And it maybe will be fits and starts. The photo you're looking at are flamingos that I photographed in September of 2023. That was the first time they ever came to Wisconsin, but it was you could probably talk about it in terms of climate change, but because they really got pushed north by a hurricane, and one of the parts of climate change are more powerful, more frequent storms. But these birds got pushed off track and they hung around for a few days in Wisconsin, and it was a Friday, and that's normally my deadline for Sunday, but I learned about this, so I drove up there, and we ended up doing a impromptu story on flamingos. There were 5 of them, and they were just tired, and they stood in the water in Port Washington and just tried to rest, and after about 5 hours, they flew, and they went over to the Wisconsin River. If you can imagine it, going to a place you've never been, and looking around and looking for a place to sleep and eat, and this place would be I'm sure they didn't want to go there, but they were so tired they sat down. There's not any food for them right there. Lake Michigan is really pretty sterile now for a bird like that has to filter feed with its bill. So, but they went over to Lake Puckaway area and then the Wisconsin River system, and then they did well. I think they fed for a little bit, and then they disappeared. Hopefully they found their way back south.
I was going to ask you if are migratory bird patterns being affected by climate change? Do we see birds arriving sooner, leaving later from Wisconsin?
Yeah, you do, certainly. That's happening. One of the risks of this is that birds that migrate not by temperature or conditions, but by the amount of light, it's called the photo period. So some of those birds are in South America for the winter. They don't know what the weather's like in Wisconsin. And they're programmed to leave on a certain day based on how much daylight there is. And so if they have evolved to migrate for food sources all the way north, and they're disconnected now because of climate change, they're in trouble because they might be too late for the food they need to sustain themselves. But there have certainly been cases where birds migrate earlier, and some birds aren't migrating much at all. Sandhill cranes, for instance, are also pretty hardy, and there have been a couple of winters recently when they don't leave the Wisconsin River system. Yeah.
And the sandhill population is pretty strong here now, isn't it?
Sandhills are doing really well. Another one of the success stories. Yeah. And what you'll see in there is a whooping crane. We have about 60 whooping cranes in Wisconsin, wilds, and I went and did a story on this particular pair that was nesting. So you see in the foreground is the nest and the 2 eggs, and it's a woman from the International Crane Foundation, and they do a process where they call take one, leave one. So they take an egg, raise it in captivity, and leave one in the wild. Mostly with sandhills and whoopers, they lay 2 eggs, but only one survives. By taking one and raise it in captivity, they have found they can increase the productivity of the species. So that's what she was going to put the egg in the cooler, and she had to make herself big because the male is very territorial. We don't have many whooping cranes, but if you just take my word for it, I only needed this one experience to understand they're the king of the marsh. So like a 7-foot wingspan, stands almost tall, and with a dagger in its beak. So she needed to make herself big. He just did a circle around us. We were there for 5 minutes, and then we left. But that's his threat display. And but in case, we are fortunate to have those in Wisconsin, and we've got a bunch of success stories, but we need to stay on, keep our mind and all of our decisions working to improve things. Cannot be lackadaisical.
Well, let's talk turkey, or turkeys. We're in the midst, I believe, of the spring turkey hunting season, and I don't know about you, but I see turkeys everywhere. I live in Whitefish Bay, and there's one walking right down the middle of Berkeley Boulevard the other night. So that seems to be a real success story from 30 years ago, where they didn't really exist in Wisconsin. How did that work, and is it really a success story?
Yeah, it's 100% a success story. They were reintroduced to the state, so they were native to Wisconsin. They got wiped out, like many species, just overhunted. And in the 1800s, there really weren't very good protections for species of wildlife. So they got wiped out and reintroduced in 1976. So this is the 50th anniversary. And the birds they trapped 29 wild turkeys in Missouri and flew them in a plane and released them in southwestern Wisconsin in January of 1976. And that started this whole thing. They took off. In fact, they've done better than the biologists at the time had suspected. So it's a tremendous success story. It's a native species, and it's like white-tailed deer, kind of, in that they can, we're seeing them in cities and suburbs now. So they're very adaptable and tough. I live in Wauwatosa. There are times when they control the traffic, on some of the streets. But they're doing really well. On Sunday, May 17th, I'm part of a group that's going to celebrate the 50th anniversary. and we're gonna plant turkey decoys on Bascom Hill. If you're familiar with 1979, students put plastic pink flamingos on Bascom Hill. And so we're gonna do an homage to that, but with a native species. And we're gonna clean up after ourselves. I think the students just put them on there. So we have the National Wild Turkey Federation, the University of Wisconsin, and the DNR, and some other partners coming together. The University of Wisconsin had a professor who was a specialist in wildlife diseases. So when those first 29 birds were flown into the state, he met those birds and looked them over, took blood samples from each. They wanted to make sure they weren't bringing a wildlife disease in with these turkeys. So that's the university connection to it. But it's a tremendous all-around success story. I love to hunt them, I like to eat them. And when I grew up, there were no wild turkeys in the state, and you didn't hunt anything in the spring. Now we hunt this bird in the spring, and it talks back to you. You know, you make your yelps, and it gobbles, and it's addicting. I one spring hunted in 7 states. I could talk for hours about wild turkeys, but one quick story. I went to the Black Hills of South Dakota. There's 5 turkey subspecies, the Merriam's turkeys in the Black Hills, so I had to go there, hunt that, and I met a man, and I said, I want to hunt with you. He ran a part-time guiding service called Gobblers Anonymous, and he had a 12-step program for people like me who needed to treat their gobbling addiction, their turkey hunting addiction. So, I mean, the main point is go hunting.
Well, speaking of turkeys, maybe you could tell the story about Carson Bender. Carson Bender is a 19-year-old hunter who was out in the woods hunting turkeys, I believe, and you have to, this is a little hard to, we didn't bring the video, but I encourage you to look it up online. Tell the story of Carson Bender.
So this is a turkey hunter who was in near Wisconsin Rapids this spring. And often when you turkey hunt, you'll sit on the ground, you're wearing camouflage, and you make turkey sounds. Typically it's a yelp, like whoop, 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 whoop. And he was doing this, and he heard something walking behind him. He had turkeys in front of him. He was actually getting ready. He ready to shoot. He had a shotgun on his knee, but he heard noise behind him, and I wouldn't have thought of it, but he's 19, so he got his phone out and put it in video mode and reverse camera to see what was behind him, and it was a bobcat. And it was pretty close. And the bobcat, so he's got all this on video. The bobcat was, when I first watched it, I thought it was a mannequin because it didn't move. It was so still. Didn't blink, didn't anything. But then you'll see it raise its paw and it starts to move toward him. And so he captured it all on video. At one point, he pans it toward his face and you could see his expression. He's got a face mask on, but his eyes are sort of like this. But he's very cool, and the bobcat kept coming at him. At one point, the bobcat looked at the camera, and I just had to laugh because has the bobcat ever seen its own image before? I don't know. What did it think about that? You know, but then it focused on him because it thought he was a turkey. And bobcats will eat wild turkeys for sure. And because he has been just using a mouth diaphragm and not moving, and it leapt at him and struck him, just scratched him. But when it found out he was a human, it ran away. So he did sustain a scratch, went to the emergency room, but he went back hunting the next day and he filled his tag. He was successful in the same spot.
So again, I would encourage you to look that up. It's a great video, really interesting. And I didn't know until I read that story recently that we have a bobcat hunting season. So we must have a lot of bobcats in the state.
Yeah, bobcats are also doing well. They will kill a deer. A bobcat is typically 20 to 30 pounds. They maybe get 40 pounds at the top end, but in one of our major deer studies done in Wisconsin, this was in 2010 in the North Woods, a bobcat killed an adult deer in that study. And a wolf killed 1 deer in that study. So for that study period, bobcats were just as effective at killing deer as a wolf. It's not their typical prey, but so they can do really well. So as our deer population has increased, that has benefited species such as bobcats. But bobcats, they eat mostly smaller mammals like rodents, chipmunks, mice, so birds, squirrels. There's plenty of food out there for bobcats. And the DNR manages the number of permits. They've been increasing it, and it seems like the bobcat population just keeps increasing also. So there's some demand for those hunting and trapping permits that they're fulfilling.
Well, before we go to audience questions, I want to talk about a bigger cat. You recently wrote about a trail cam video, again, a crazy video, which you've got to watch, of cougar cubs, right, in Minnesota that were discovered around a cache, a deer that they'd killed and cached. And the question is, that's in Minnesota, but are we going to have cougars in Wisconsin soon?
Yeah, I would expect so. Yeah, it's a matter of when, not if. And so that will check another box, because mountain lions, cougars, pumas, however you want to call them, were native to the state, and they also got wiped out. So they belong here, in my view, and they will be back. They're already observed. They pass through mostly. I wrote a story some years ago. This is one of the most remarkable stories. But these animals have a source population in the Black Hills, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska mostly, into North Dakota a little bit. And they're mostly males that are looking for territory, so they can travel long distances, 1,000 miles in some cases. One of the cougars went from the Black Hills through Wisconsin, Michigan. It ended up being killed in Connecticut by a car. So just to give you an idea of the dispersal of some of these animals. When females tend to not disperse as far as the males, but when we get a female that settles down in Wisconsin, it'll be just a matter of time.
So final question, with the success of some of these populations, the deer pipe, the turkeys, maybe cougars eventually, are we coming back into conflict with humans, especially farmers up north?
Yeah, that's the biggest rub of these wildlife increases is conflict with humans, often livestock producers. So it's a great challenge. Right now, the wolf is listed under the Endangered Species Act, so there's no lethal management allowed on wolves in Wisconsin. And some of the livestock producers in northern Wisconsin are incurring losses that they really can't do much about. So it's a real struggle to balance that management in a way. And cougars will be a special challenge. They're so stealthy, and we'll have to see how it works. You're looking at a couple of photos of me in the field. Well, one is on 4th and State. A gentleman brought a catfish to work to my building and asked the receptionist if I was in to come down and see a catfish that he caught. So I went down to interview him. I happened to be in the office that day. And what a great job. People bring their fish to work. I mean, I was thrilled. In the other photo, I'm in the middle, and this is at a black bear den near Wausau. And the man on the left found the den. He's a rabbit hunter, and he had beagles. And they were out rabbit hunting, and there was a big mound of sticks on the ground in the winter. And his beagles were sniffing. He walked over to it and saw black fur. It was a bear den. Sometimes they'll den on top of the ground. They just gather. They're such tough animals. They can withstand Wisconsin winter like that. They gather some sticks over the top of them, and this sow just went to sleep. She had cubs. She had 3 cubs like that This is a different den, but that's a University of Wisconsin Stevens Point student with a bear cub on her shoulder at a different den. But, and the rabbit hunter informed the DNR, and the DNR informed that University of Wisconsin graduate student who was doing bear research. So we went in and put a GPS collar on the sow. So I was working on that story. Just another, I mean, so for a kid like me who loves the outdoors, these are the moments and the stories that I just feel so privileged to do what I do.
That's great. Paul Smith, let's go to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing with us, and David for the interview, and I am here to help with the microphone.
Hi, Teresa Regan. Paul, thank you for being here. I want to give you the opportunity. You talked about a C grade, and we talked about highlights and perhaps the high end of that. What are you concerned about? What's bringing the grade down?
Yeah, one of the big issues is loss of biodiversity. So like we have some of these species that are doing well, but there are hundreds that are doing very poorly, including insects. So the base of our food web, which is really the most important part. And as humans, you know, we're all connected to this. The natural world gives us the oxygen we need to breathe, the water we need to drink, and the food that we eat. Insects have a very big role in this natural world that we're connected to. So that's one of my big concerns, is a decline in insects. When I was, perhaps everybody in the room can even remember, even the younger members, but if you were driving in a summer evening in Wisconsin, your windshield would be covered with insects. You'd just smash them as you're driving. Now, I mean, I can take a trip all the way north and back and not have to clean my windshield. I just did that, for instance, for the governor's fishing opener last week. I believe I didn't clean my windshield once. But yeah, that's one of my concerns, is the loss of biodiversity, and we're seeing fewer insects, fewer birds. Those are some of my concerns. And then we need to do a better job at, like happened in the 70s with DDT, when that got outlawed. There are chemicals, things in our life now that I believe our Environmental Protection Agency regulators should really be taking a harder look at and try to get them out of our food supply, out of use, period. Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much. My name's Jean Casey. I'm an avid hiker. I love hiking. I have a borderline irrational fear of bears that seems to be getting worse the older I get. Settle a disagreement for me. My sister is hiking about an hour north of Eau Claire on Friday, solo. She knows the trail though. I think she's crazy for not bringing bear spray, or at least a loud whistle. She thinks I'm crazy for being so paranoid about bears. Now I'm gonna add cougars to the mix though, too. So who's the crazy one, Mary or me? Thank you.
You're here with me, so I'm just gonna, your sister is, yeah, I think it's valid to have some concern about your place in the outdoor world, but we have something like 25,000 bears in this state, and bear attacks on humans are so rare. So you incurred a greater risk driving to this event today or driving to work than you would at any point in your lifetime to be attacked by a bear. And the cougar is even more remote, because we may have one or two in the state at this particular moment, but they really don't want anything to do mostly with humans. So I would please get outdoors and enjoy yourself. If it makes you feel better to put a bear can spray on your shoulder, on your holster, do it. Also, I'd be very careful, learn how to use it, because I did a story on this years ago. I went to an outdoor writers conference, and they had a bear-sized decoy on a mechanized device, and it was 50 yards away. And the bear spray manufacturer outfitted everybody with one, and they made the bear charge you on this pulley system at bear speed. It's so hard when a bear's running at you to get that out of your holster, engage it, and spray it. And you gotta make sure the wind is in the right direction. As most people end up hurting themselves with the bear spray than the animal. So, but in any case, please get outdoors and don't try not to worry about bears.
Jeff Smoller, you're 65 years old, and you, by your own statement, you said, what a great job. I can go over a list of colleagues I knew at the Journal Sentinel, writing, photo, art, and they all would say they had a great job too, about 7 or 8 guys and 1 gal. Looking at your job, and you'll not be there forever, how would you label your position in the future? Healthy, watched, threatened, or endangered?
The outdoor writer's job that I have,
Yes.
outdoor editor. Yeah. Well, from the time I started doing this work in 1994, and I was at the Journal Times in Racine, there were, at that time, 20 full-time outdoors writers at Wisconsin daily newspapers. I was just one of them at the Racine paper. Milwaukee had 4, I want to say, the 2 at the Journal, 2 at the Sentinel, and throughout the state. So I'm the last one. In 2026, I'm the last. It's a great credit to our newspaper that they support this position, I think. And I wish more papers had them. But if you look objectively at that data, the trend is going one way. So I'm not sure. I want to tell you that there's great interest in outdoors things. I've always tried to be as diverse as possible and cover things from hiking and bird watching to hunting and fishing. And I think that's important. But I know there's a lot of, the last 2 days, I had a story that ran Sunday about raft fishing on the Wolf River. It's these special rafts that people build basically and launch, and they fish for walleyes mostly. And the last 2 days, those stories have been our most read story on our website. So there's a lot of interest out there in the public, I know, about these topics. This is just a very recent example. And I would hope that my position would be maintained, and also that other papers would find a way to also cover these topics. It's not only a thing about outdoors, however, it's also the general trajectory of newspapers in America. So it's kind of, there's a double whammy going on. Thank you for your question, though, but I met with a young writer last week. I try to meet with people through my professional organizations to encourage them, you know, to stay in the field.
Wonderful presentation. Steve Chevalier, I live in Brookfield. What's the coyote story? Because the most eerie sound at all is in the middle of the night when a pack of coyotes has gotten a kill down near the swamp that I live next to. We call it a preserve, but it's a swamp. So how are coyotes doing in general?
Yeah, doing fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, their numbers have increased tremendously. There's a coyote den within, I don't know what specifically, but there's at least one coyote den within 1,000 yards of where we're sitting. No doubt about it, yeah. I did a story with the fellow who runs a coyote research project. He's from Ohio State University. Most of the research they do is in Chicago. And so they'll trap the coyotes and put GPS collars on them so they can follow them 24 hours a day. There was a coyote that had a den at Soldier Field. And it only came out from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. And it would go back in. They're so adaptable, so smart, that they're around us. So some of them eat McDonald's French fries, others eat rats and seagulls, so they're very adaptable. They're not going away. Another thing shows that in areas where intensive hunting or trapping pressure is applied to the coyote population, they can reduce the numbers, but then you have to continue that every year or the coyote population will build back up. And when you reduce the number of breeding adults, the ones that do breed have more resources available to them, so they have bigger litters. So where they used to have 2, 3, or 4, now they're having 8 or 10. And so they'll build back up. That's a very adaptable animal, so they're with us for the long term.
Hey, thank you. I'm Andrew.
Hi.
And I had a question on your take on game farms. So my head started churning as you were speaking today, kind of, is that taking revenue away from the DNR? Is that getting more people out to hunt who would regularly not hunt and involved in thinking about conservation? But yeah, interested to hear your take.
Yeah, well, I have never hunted deer on a game farm. We have some in the state. I have hunted pheasants on game farms. But in general, I'm not a fan of the big game farms. Hunting, they call them hunting preserves or shooting preserves, because they're all behind fences. And somebody can pay $10,000 and be pretty much guaranteed that they're going to get a large white-tailed deer buck at one of those facilities. So, and then there's disease transfer associated with that, because often they're shipping animals in. They can be run totally disease-free and ethically, I believe, but if it's a big enough area, but often the areas are tighter or smaller, so it doesn't align with my values in hunting. It's a legal business in Wisconsin. So that's really where it comes down to, is these are people who want to run a business like that. They can do it legally. And I hope that they would have enough room that it could be done more ethically, and also take every precaution to prevent disease from spreading.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Draper. My question is about the trees, and it seems like the combination of the emerald ash borer and the high winds is really taking down a lot of trees. And I'm curious if this is a trend that is concerning, that we're going to see more of, or if it's just kind of anecdotal and a drop in the bucket in the greater scheme of things.
The future for ash trees in our state is, it's over. So, yeah. I have a property that it lost about 30 dead. So it's already pretty much, I think it might be in all 72 counties now. And so, I'm sorry, but for ash, there's no going back. It happened to our elm trees too, and chestnuts. You know, we had a bunch of real big native trees in the US that have been hit by various diseases like that. And it might be in the future they come up with a variety of black and white ash that are so susceptible now, but that can regrow, because they're really valuable. Some of them grow in wet environments, and not a lot of trees like to do that. And so I guess maybe for the next generation or generations after that, because we're talking trees that take good number of years to become mature. But yeah, for right now, emerald ash borer is really doing a number. And I met a guy who he was an arborist, and he had a big bucket truck. And I was going to a spot where there were some bird nests, and I happened to pass his crew, and he said, all he does is take down ash trees. And he has enough work for the next 10 years already booked, because utilities have a right of ways, and they can't take the chance that the ash tree is going to fall on the wires or disrupt power. So he had already had projects booked, and it was 99% ash because of emerald ash borer. So just an indication of that particular species. We have other trees that are doing well, but this is one of those things where I graded things out. I would love to see more oaks regenerated, and but I'm hopeful projects, like that will help some of these other native species that aren't similarly affected, but that emerald ash borer has been deadly. Yeah. Yeah, okay.